the first point we are dealing with is a medical crisis. A medical crisis which involves epidemiology of a disease that we are not familiar with. And therefore, everything else that we are going to do will be determined by the epidemiology of this disease, which means by the way that the disease will be behaving. I would like to say that you are also aware that even this afternoon, my brother C.S. Kagwe will be talking to you. And you are also aware that during the course of the week, you have seen what is happening in terms of the epidemiology of this disease. I want to say, and I wish to commend the government, led by His Excellency the President, for all the effective measures that he has put in place that has ensured that we have had minimal deaths from this pandemic called COVID-19. This committee, chaired by Dr. Sarah Ruto, got views from very many institutions and people. And Dr. Umbajo and his team from the Ministry of Health have done various simulations. But like I have said, if I may speak in a language that you understand, nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow. And since this is not a Kenyan problem, we have what is happening elsewhere in the world to learn from. You may want to learn from what is happening in the Scandinavian countries, which is not a very good example because there are fewer people, large facilities. You may also want to learn from what is happening in the United States, which is an admixture of the high and mighty and the slums like we have in our own country. As we consider this report, let us remain very sober and take into account the fact that there are certain places that have rushed to open, and like in the southern part of the US now and in California, where they just try to reopen the economy and we have an upsurge. So the question that we ask ourselves is, which will be the comfortable number of deaths that we want to be responsible for? And the answer is 0. Let me address the challenges that will give my ministry, together with government, a lot of problem to contain this pandemic. You have heard me admonishing one of you just now for not wearing his mask. I want to tell the nation at large that the nose is 10 times more dangerous than the mouth, because the mouth remains closed unless you are talking. The nose is open all the time. So our culture, where you are wearing a mask on your chin, like it's being done by a substantial number of people, or the ones who think they are complying are wearing but they are leaving the nose, this kind of very reckless behavior is going to give us a lot of problems. What is the goal of government in terms of opening educational institutions? I think it should be very, very clear for all and sundry that this disease is here to stay, and that for those of you who are not medical, perhaps it is already with very many people and we are learning it because it's a strange disease, and there will be a time when you will have COVID-19, but so what? But for now, all stakeholders must be prepared. And I want to first of all address the issue of the parents at home. The abrogation of responsibility by our parents must be reversed, and it should be reversed like yesterday. Let us not take our children as a burden. So as the children remain at home, don't say they are not learning. They should be learning from their parents. And you don't just, learning does not mean learning mathematics. There's so much to learn in life. And it should start with the family. So this is an opportune time for us to strengthen parental engagement in terms of going forward. So each parent should be happy and engaged in training his or her child. Our second goal is to ensure that when we open schools, every child from Ukuru Kayaba to Mudaiga must have the same facilities, at least should have the same rights. We should not be thinking about examinations alone. The issue of transition and the mega issue of CBC, which is competency-based curriculum, they must go hand in hand. So, you are also aware that the government has 5 different committees related to coronavirus, some dealing with economic issues and what have you. So we have discussed the preliminary report inside here and given our inputs. And I have told you the goal of this report was not to open or close schools. The goal was to ensure that our children remain safe whenever we decide to open the schools, and that the sole determinant will depend on what is happening in the country and elsewhere and the Ministry of Health. Going forward, the government wishes very strongly to urge parents and guardians and caregivers to continue providing guidance to their children as they learn from home, including supervising their studies from broadcast. But it is also needless to say that many of the parents have lost their means of livelihood. Everywhere. In the United States now we have 40 million, which is 1 in every 4th American has no job. Perhaps it is the same thing here. But the children are yours. And everybody is bleeding from the economics point of view. But I think together, and with God on our side, we should be able to get elsewhere. I am aware that this report reached you irregularly before it was delivered to me, but then that is being Kenyan. There's nothing wrong with it. The Kenyan is a very strange person. I'm going to urge the 4th estate to help us to fight this virus by leading by example and helping us to ensure that the right thing is done. Once we have corrected this report, and I hope that we respect our professions like you have done in the past, that will allow me to see my report and look at it and come and present it to you, rather than you calling me and saying, this is already here, what is 1, 2, 3? That would be a little bit better. So don't ask me too many questions which have no basis, because for now, you have seen the numbers this week, isn't it? How many of you here have children or grandchildren, or are aspiring? Even if you are aspiring, going by the reports of last week, how many of you will take your child to the school next week? Because you expect me to speak, and of course I'll speak again by the time I get this report and have consulted properly, let us agree that a child who is alive and well at home is better than one who attempted to do the exam and died there. Are we together? Are we together? You are quiet, but I've told you, and I think this is the narrative that we must talk about. The ministry wishes to state categorically that all decisions will be made by giving priority to the health and safety of learners and teachers of schools thereof. Let me take this opportunity to say something about private schools. I told you Kenyans are very interesting. I would want us to sympathize with the private schools because they employ a large number of Kenyans. Over 160,000 teachers, together perhaps even 300,000 plus the support staff, to keep the schools alive and to make sure that material is given to the children where they are. Can we have a humane face as we try to decimate the schools? So all this noise of saying, oh, you know, they are charging this, they are charging that. Go and negotiate with them. When you decided to take your child there, nobody told you to take your child there. Go and negotiate with them and agree, because there is less money in circulation. Make sure that you continue to pay for the services you are getting from them, so that they can keep the teachers in their positions. It will help the government manage better. Otherwise, what is going to happen is when the private schools collapse, it is government who is going to deal with them, because all those children will come to the public schools. So let us be reasonable and rational, and let me wish you all the very best. I think the next time I talk to you, I'll be telling you very clearly which area the government is doing, not with a finality, because you may find that after 2 weeks, we are reporting 1,000 cases. You have seen cases in South America, a country I don't want to mention, where even the doctors ran away and even the corpses were just being burned on the streets. These are serious possibilities that Kenyans must deal with as we want to gamble with the lives of our children. So if we are not able to manage the way we want, then we must be prepared to have our children and wait for the right time, so that if it means, like I said before, if it means that they have to come back to school early in the year, to start the year all over again, so be it. What do you want to do about it? Would you rather allow about 20,000 to die so that you open earlier? How are you going to select that 20,000 or 100,000? How are you going to select them? Because to us, the life of one child is more important. So rather than thinking about so much about exams and learning, teach the child what you know yourself. If you are a headsman, it may be very good if you go and show your child how to milk a cow, the way I was shown the other time. It's very important. I used to go to the shamba to dig. Who do you think you are that you don't want your child to dirty his hands because, oh, there is an exam coming? And skilling the child does not mean going back to school alone. So on the issue of parental empowerment, please help us to carry it forward, starting with yourself. Help us to tell Kenyans to be serious, because the longer time we shall spend here will basically depend on our inability to follow simple instructions. I want to thank you very much.